What's up, everybody? I'm Gabe Casper, and this is 3 Minutes or Less. So at the opening of the 117th Congress of the United States of America, Representative Emanuel Cleaver opened the session with a prayer in which he now infamously ended by saying, "Amen and a woman." This, of course, drew scathing reviews from many political commentators, but it also led to some pretty epic memes. And to be honest, I'll say this as personally and lovingly as I can. It was a pretty silly thing to say. Like the word amen, it's not a gendered word. It's a Hebrew word that means surely. But to be honest, for all the fuss over the final word of his prayer, that was frankly not the most troubling part of the prayer. See, his prayer started out fine. He asked for peace. He asked for wisdom. He acknowledged our shortcomings. Those are all good things. But then at the end of his prayer, he prayed this prayer in the name of, and I'll quote him here, the monotheistic God, Brahma, and God known by many different names and many different faiths. This has obvious logical flaws, right? One can't address the monotheistic God, whoever that is, by the way, which nevertheless means one God and only one God, and then in the very next breath, address a polytheistic God, Brahma, meaning one God among multiple gods, as if they're the same God. There's either one God or there's multiple gods. Secondly, one can't address the God known by many names and many faiths as if that's the same God. There's not any serious adherent to any world religion, to almost any world religion, that would say, oh yeah, it's all kind of the same God. Now, all that said, I'm sympathetic to Representative Cleaver because he's trying to navigate the reality of pluralism. But I think there's some real issues with his approach. And frankly, it's not just him. It's a pretty common sentiment floating around in our society that all religions are kind of the same thing. They're just sort of superficially different. Just tell you, it's just not true. And it's insulting to adherents of those religions. Like, I don't believe a Muslim person wants to be told that her worship of Allah is basically the same thing as my worship of Jesus Christ. And yet, we're left with the paradox of pluralism. How do we, as the ever-pretentious coexist bumper sticker reminds us, how do we coexist with a diversity of worldviews without watering them down into some illogical nonsense? Well, I find WashU legal professor John Inazu's concept of confident pluralism helpful here. He said this in a recent interview. Confident pluralism is a desire to push toward a shared community, although a modestly shared one. The idea of confidence and pluralism means that we have to recognize both the reality of our differences and our tendency to suppress difference. Confidence without pluralism, if we're just confident in our own beliefs, we tend to suppress differences and push down those who disagree with us. Conversely, pluralism without confidence papers over our real differences for the sake of a false unity or feigned agreement. We end up pretending that we all agree or share some basic ideas when in fact we don't. And it's an unstable and unauthentic way to live together. And so the invitation is to not paper over our differences, is not to water down what we hold to be true and what we hold to be sacred, rather it's to be confident in that, but then seek some level of community within a pluralistic society. It's about living with grace and truth.